In a small, forgotten town, there was a girl named Zoya. She was only 10 years old, but her eyes looked older, like someone who had seen too much pain. Every day, Zoya sat on the footpath near a busy street. She wore torn clothes and had no shoes. Her feet were always dirty, and her thin hands held an old plastic bowl. But she wasn't begging, she was singing. Zoya's voice was soft and sweet, like a lullaby from the sky. People passed by, some with curiosity, others without even a glance. A few dropped coins in her bowl, most didn't. But Zoya kept singing. She didn't stop. She had one reason to sing: her mother. Zoya's mother, Shabana, was very sick. She had been lying in bed for days, coughing and unable to eat. They lived in a small hut made of tin and plastic. There was no electricity, no proper roof. Rain leaked in from the corners. Rats came in at night. And worst of all, there was no food. Zoya had stopped going to school. She had stopped playing with other children. All she cared about now was collecting enough coins to buy one piece of bread or a packet of milk for her mother. Every evening, after wiping her mother's forehead with a wet cloth, she walked to the main street. She chose a corner near a bakery. The smell of fresh bread made her stomach growl, but she ignored it. Instead, she sang. Sometimes she sang old songs her mother had taught her. Sometimes she made up her own words. Her voice was small, but it had pain in it, real pain. And that made it beautiful. But no one really noticed, until one day when the sky was dark with clouds and the wind was cold. It started raining slowly. People opened umbrellas and rushed home. Zoya stayed. Her clothes were wet, but she didn't stop singing. She knew that rainy days were worse. Fewer people meant fewer coins. Her lips were shaking, her fingers numb. Still, she sang. Suddenly, a black car slowed down near her. It was a big, shiny car. Not the kind you see in that poor town. The car stopped right in front of her. Zoya froze. The window rolled down, and a man looked at her. He was wearing a black coat and sunglasses, even though the sun had already set. His face was calm but serious. Zoya quickly stood up and bowed her head. She didn't know if she should sing or run. The man stepped out of the car holding an umbrella. He looked tall, rich, and very different from anyone Zoya had seen. He didn't speak for a few seconds. He just stared at her. Then he slowly walked up to her, leaned down, and said something in a low voice. Zoya could barely hear him over the rain, but the words he whispered changed everything. "You don't belong here." Her eyes widened. She didn't understand what he meant. Was he angry? Was he going to take her away? Or was he just a kind stranger? Before she could say anything, the man stood up again and looked around. People were watching now. A few had stopped to see what was going on. He didn't give her a coin. He didn't ask her anything else. He just stared at her for one more moment, then turned around and walked back to his car. Zoya stood there, frozen. The car drove away slowly, disappearing into the rainy night. She was left with her old bowl, now filled with just 3 small coins. Her clothes were wet, her stomach was empty, and her mind was full of questions. Who was that man? Why did he say those words? And why? Why did she feel like something big was about to happen? She walked home that night in silence. The rain had stopped, but her heart was still storming. When she reached the hut, her mother was awake but weak. Zoya didn't tell her about the man. Not yet. She just sat beside her, held her hand, and hummed a soft song. But deep inside, she knew something had changed. Something had begun, and it all started with a whisper. "You don't belong here." That night, Zoya couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the man's words in her head. "You don't belong here." What did he mean? Why did he stop? And why didn't he give her money like the others? She looked at her mother lying beside her. Her face was pale. Her lips were dry. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Zoya had used the 3 coins she earned to buy a small piece of bread. She broke it into tiny pieces and gave most of it to her mother. She didn't take a single bite herself. Morning came and the sky was clear again. Zoya washed her face with cold water from a broken pipe outside the hut. She tied her messy hair back and put on the same old dress. She remembered what the man said before he left. "Come tomorrow, same place. I'll bring someone." She didn't know if she should believe him. People in the world had only ever lied or ignored her, but something in his voice, it felt different. So she went back to the same street corner that evening. She sat in her usual spot next to the bakery, holding her plastic bowl. She started singing again, her eyes moving to every black car that passed, but none of them stopped. Minutes turned into hours. People came and went. A few dropped coins, most didn't. Zoya's voice was tired, but she kept singing, just in case. But the man didn't come. Not that day. Not the next day either. Zoya still returned to that corner. Every evening. Waiting. On the third evening, as she was about to give up, something happened. She heard a familiar engine. She turned quickly. The black car had returned. Zoya's heart started racing. The man stepped out again. Same black coat. Same calm face, but this time, he was holding something in his hands. A guitar case in a brown envelope. He walked straight to her. This time he spoke. "You waited for me," he said. Zoya nodded quietly. He handed her a small packet. Inside was a sandwich and a bottle of juice. "Eat," he said. "Then we'll talk." Zoya was hungry, very hungry, but she didn't eat right away. She just stared at him, confused. Why was this rich man helping her? Finally, he sat on the bench beside her and opened the envelope. He pulled out an old photograph. He showed it to Zoya. In the photo was a young woman, smiling on a stage, holding a microphone. Her eyes looked bright. Her hair was long and beautiful. Zoya stared at the photo. "That's my mother," she whispered. The man smiled, but his eyes were sad. "She was once a star," he said. Her voice filled every hall in this country. Zoya didn't understand. Her mother never told her anything like that. All she ever knew was that her mother used to sing lullabies, but then got sick and stayed home. The man closed the envelope. "Your mother disappeared many years ago. She was in trouble, and she ran away." Zoya asked, "How do you know her?" There was a long pause. Then he replied quietly, "Because I loved her." Zoya's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what that meant. Was this man her father or just someone from her mother's past? Before she could ask, he said, "I didn't come earlier because I didn't know where she was. I thought she left forever. But when I heard your voice on this street, I knew you sound just like her." Zoya looked down at her hands. She felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, but something heavy and warm. The man stood up again. "I want to help you, but I also want to see your mother. Can you take me to her?" Zoya hesitated. She had never trusted anyone before, but something in his eyes told her. This man was not lying. She nodded. "Come with me," she said. They walked together through narrow streets, past broken buildings and garbage piles. People stared. No one had ever seen a rich man in that part of town. Finally, they reached the small tin hut. Zoya opened the door slowly. Her mother was lying on the floor, weak and barely breathing. When the man saw her, he froze. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Shabana." Her mother opened her eyes, and when she saw him, her body shook. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Her lips moved silently. Then she fainted. Zoya screamed, "Ami!" The man rushed to her side, held her hand, and called her name again and again. Zoya watched, her heart pounding. What was happening? Who was this man really? And why, after all these years, had he returned now? Zoya stood in the corner of the small hut, shaking. Her mother lay unconscious on the old mat, and the rich man knelt beside her, holding her hand. He whispered her name again and again. "Shabana, it's me. Open your eyes." Zoya didn't understand who he was, or why her mother had fainted when she saw him. Was he telling the truth? Did he really know her from before? After a few minutes, her mother slowly opened her eyes. Her lips were dry and her voice was weak. She looked up at the man, confused. "Is it Really you? She whispered. The man nodded. His eyes were full of tears. Yes, after all these years, I finally found you. Zoya sat beside them, holding her mother's other hand. She was still trying to make sense of what was happening. Her mother tried to sit up but failed. The man helped her gently. "Why are you here?" she asked. "You shouldn't have come. My time is over." He shook his head firmly. "No, your time is not over, and neither is Zoya's." Zoya's eyes widened. "You know my name?" The man smiled softly. "Your mother once told me that if she ever had a daughter, she would name her Zoya. I never forgot that." Shabana closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I didn't want this life for her," she said, "but I had no choice." The man stood up and walked to the doorway. He opened his black leather bag and pulled out something. It was a small music recorder. "Listen," he said. He pressed play. A soft old song played from the speaker. It was a woman's voice, full of emotion, full of life. The voice was beautiful, haunting. Zoya froze. "That's Ami's voice." The man nodded. "Your mother was once the most loved voice in the country. She sang on big stages, on radio, on TV. But then, something happened. A lie ruined everything." Zoya looked at her mother, shocked. "Is this true, Ami?" Shabana slowly nodded, tears falling from her eyes. "A man I trusted blamed me for stealing music from him. I didn't do it. But people believed him. The media, the fans. Everyone turned their back on me. I lost everything overnight," she continued. "I was scared. I was alone, and then I found out I was going to be a mother. I left everything behind and came to this town." Zoya couldn't speak. Her mother's story felt like something out of a movie. She had never imagined her weak, sick mother was once a star. The man looked at her seriously. "Zoya, your voice, it's like hers. When I heard you sing on that street, it was like hearing the past again." Zoya felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. "Why did you come back now?" she asked. The man sighed. "For years I searched for your mother. I wanted to clear her name. I wanted to help, but I couldn't find her. Then one evening I heard a child singing on the street, and I knew." He paused and said, "You are not meant to sing for coins, Zoya. Your voice is a gift. It should be heard. It should be respected." Zoya looked at her mother, uncertain. "I don't want to leave Ami." The man nodded. "You won't. I promise. I will help both of you." He pulled out an envelope from his coat. Inside was money. A lot of it. Enough to buy food, medicine, and a real roof over their heads. "This is just the start," he said. "But I need you both to trust me." Shabana took the envelope with shaky hands. She looked at him with doubt. "You really want to help? After everything?" The man looked her in the eyes and said softly, "I never stopped caring. I just didn't know where you went." That night, for the first time in weeks, Zoya and her mother ate a proper meal. The man had also brought fruits, soup, and medicine. Before leaving, he handed Zoya the guitar case he had brought. "This was your mother's. She left it behind long ago. I've kept it safe all these years. It's yours now." Zoya opened the case carefully. Inside was an old, beautiful guitar. Her mother's name was carved on the back. Zoya touched the strings gently. A small sound came out, soft and sweet. The man smiled. "Tomorrow I'll take you to a place where people will listen to that sound, where you'll never have to sing on the street again." Zoya looked at her mother. Her mother nodded slowly with tears in her eyes. "Go, Beta. You were born for this." Zoya didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in her life, she felt something. Inside her she had never felt before. Hope. But one question still stayed in her heart. Who really was this man? And what else was he hiding? Zoya woke up early the next morning. Her mother was still sleeping, but she looked more peaceful now. The medicine had helped. There was color in her cheeks again. Zoya stepped outside the hut. The sun was rising, painting the sky in orange and pink. For the first time, the day didn't feel heavy. It felt different. She looked at the guitar case beside her. It didn't just carry music, it carried memories. Her mother's memories. And now hers. That afternoon, the black car returned. The man stepped out. His name was Mr. Kareem. He had never told Zoya his full story. He said he would explain in time. For now, he only said, "You must be ready to sing." Zoya was nervous. "But where are we going?" Kareem smiled. "To a place where your voice will be heard, truly heard." Zoya looked back at the hut. Her mother stood at the door, weak but smiling. "Go, my child," she said. "Let the world hear what I once hid." Zoya got into the car. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was strong. They drove to the city. It was big, bright, and full of noise. Cars rushed past. Buildings touched the sky. Zoya had never seen anything like it. Mr. Kareem took her to a large building with glass walls. Inside there were microphones, cameras, and musicians. It was a recording studio. Zoya gasped. "This is like a dream." Kareem nodded. "Your mother once sang her heart out in this very room. Now it's your turn." Zoya was handed a simple dress, shoes, and headphones. Her messy hair was brushed. Her face was cleaned. She looked in the mirror. For the first time in her life, she looked like someone important. A music director came into the room. He had gray hair, round glasses, and a kind smile. "So, this is the girl?" he asked. Kareem nodded. "Zoya, daughter of Shabana." The man's smile disappeared. "Shabana? The Shabana?" Kareem replied. "Yes. Her daughter. She sings too." The director's face changed. His eyes softened. "Then let's hear her." Zoya entered the sound room. Her heart beat fast. She took the guitar in her hands. The strings felt like magic under her fingers. She closed her eyes. She remembered her mother's lullabies, the nights without food, the coins in the bowl, the rain, the whisper. And then she sang. The room fell silent. The technicians stopped what they were doing. Even the director stood still. Her voice was small but filled with truth. It carried pain, hope, and something else. Something powerful. Soul. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then the director walked in. "Zoya," he said softly, "you don't sing. You speak to hearts." Zoya looked down, shyly. "Thank you, sir." He turned to Kareem. "She's ready. Let's record. Let's give this world a voice it forgot." Over the next week, Zoya recorded 3 songs. Simple songs filled with emotion. She didn't know anything about music theory. She only knew how to feel. And that was enough. Kareem made sure her mother received the best treatment in a private hospital. A nurse was sent to stay with her. The small hut was cleaned, repaired, and filled with food. Zoya visited her mother every day after recording. Each time, her mother looked stronger. "I'm proud of you," she whispered one night. Zoya held her hand. "It's all because of him." "Mr. Kareem." Shabana looked away. Her eyes were distant. Zoya noticed the change. "What is it, Ami?" Her mother took a deep breath. "There's something you should know." Zoya leaned closer. "Mr. Kareem. He wasn't just a friend from the past." Zoya's eyes widened. "Then, who is he?" Her mother held her hand tightly. "He was the man I loved before everything went wrong. Before I disappeared. He wanted to marry me. But when the scandal happened, I left without telling him the truth." Zoya whispered. "What truth?" There was a long pause. Shabana looked into her daughter's eyes. "You're his daughter, Zoya." Zoya felt her heart stop. "What?" Shabana nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "He doesn't know. I never told him. But now he deserves to." Zoya was silent. Her whole world had just changed in one sentence. The man who saved her, the man who believed in her voice, the man who returned with a promise, was her father. That night, Zoya sat alone, looking at the city lights outside the hospital window. Her mind was full of questions. Should she tell him? Would he believe her? What if he left again? She hugged the guitar close. Her mother had lost everything once because of a lie. Zoya had a chance to bring back the truth, but she had to be brave. Tomorrow, she would tell him. The next morning, Zoya couldn't sing. Her voice worked fine, but her heart was too heavy. All night she had replayed her mother's words, "He is your father, Zoya." She had stared at the ceiling, wondering what to do. Should she tell him? Would it change everything? When Mr. Karim picked her up for the studio that day, he noticed her silence. "Are you okay?" he asked. Zoya nodded, but her eyes looked. He didn't push, he only said, "If something's on your mind, you can always tell me." "I'll listen." Zoya nodded again, but the words were stuck in her throat. At the studio, Zoya was asked to record her most emotional song yet, one her mother had written long ago but never sang in public. The lyrics spoke of a woman leaving behind her love, her dreams, and hiding a secret that burned inside her. Zoya sang it with so much pain that when she finished, even the music director had tears in his eyes. Mr. Karim was sitting quietly behind the glass. He looked at her with pride, but also with a strange expression. Later that evening, Zoya returned to the hospital. Her mother smiled when she entered. "Did you tell him?" she asked. Zoya shook her head. "I tried, but I was scared." Her mother gently took her hand. "Zoya, you must. He deserves to know the truth. You are his daughter. He's been looking for us all these years. Don't keep him in the dark now." Zoya sat in silence. "What if he leaves again?" she asked. Her mother smiled weakly. "He came back without knowing. That means his heart never left." The next morning, Zoya asked Mr. Karim if they could sit in the park before going to the studio. He agreed. They sat on a bench under a big tree. The wind was soft. The world was quiet. Zoya turned to him. "Can I ask you something? Personal?" Karim nodded. "Anything." She took a deep breath. "Why did you love my mother?" Karim's eyes softened. He looked out at the trees, remembering. She was full of life. She sang from her soul. She didn't care about money or fame, just music and truth. And she had a kind heart. "I wanted to marry her. But then, she vanished. I searched everywhere, but she never left a message." Zoya felt her heart tighten. She left because she was protecting something. Karim looked at her. "Protecting what?" Zoya's voice cracked as she whispered. "Me." There was silence. Karim blinked. "What do you mean?" Zoya's hands shook as she pulled out a small photo from her pocket. It was an old picture of her as a baby in her mother's arms. On the back was written, "Zoya, my light, my secret." She handed it to him. Karim read the back, then looked at her. His face changed. His eyes widened. Your secret?" Zoya nodded slowly. "You're not just someone who helped me on the street." She looked into his eyes. "You're my father." Karim's lips parted, but no words came out. His hands trembled. He stared at her for a long time. Then finally, in a broken voice, he said, "Why, didn't she tell me?" Zoya held back tears. "She was scared. She had lost everything. She didn't want you to suffer with her." Karim stood up, walking a few steps away. He placed a hand on the tree trunk to steady himself. "All these years," he whispered. "I thought I lost her. I didn't know I had a daughter." Zoya walked up to him and gently placed her hand in his. He turned and looked at her, eyes full of shock and something deeper. "Love. You're really my daughter?" Zoya nodded. "I am." For a moment he said nothing. Then, slowly, he knelt down, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "You are the most beautiful gift I never knew I had." Zoya broke into tears. The years of pain, the hunger, the singing on the street, the nights in the cold. It all came pouring out in that hug. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a father. That evening, he took her to the hospital himself. When Shabana saw the two of them enter, hand in hand, her eyes filled with tears. Kareem walked to her bed, sat beside her and took her hand. "You should have told me," he said softly. Shabana smiled, eyes wet. "I thought I was saving you." He shook his head. "You saved me by giving me her." Then he turned to Zoya and said, "No more secrets. No more singing on footpaths. You are a star, Zoya, and now the world will hear your voice, not just for music, but for truth." Zoya nodded, tears shining in her eyes. She wasn't just a singer anymore, she was a daughter. She was a rising star, and her story was only beginning. The night was cold, but Zoya's hands were warm, not from the weather, but from the fire inside. It was the biggest day of her life. She was about to sing on a real stage, under real lights, in front of real people. And this time she wasn't singing for coins. She was singing for her truth. Mr. Kareem stood beside her backstage. He held her shoulders gently and said, "No matter what happens out there, remember, you don't have to impress anyone. Just sing like you did on the street, from your heart." Zoya nodded, but her legs were shaking. A girl who once sang for food was now standing behind a curtain that led to hundreds of people. Big music producers were in the audience, journalists too. They had all come to see the mystery girl with the golden voice, and among them sat her mother, now recovering in a wheelchair, eyes shining with pride. As the host announced her name, the lights dimmed. "Tonight, for the first time ever, please welcome Zoya." The curtain rose. Zoya stepped forward slowly. The stage lights blinded her for a second, but then she saw them, hundreds of faces looking up at her. She took a deep breath. Her hands found the guitar strings. She closed her eyes. And then she sang. The first note was soft, like a whisper from the past. But as she sang the first few lines of her song, one her mother wrote years ago, the hall fell silent. No one coughed. No one moved. Her voice was like rain on dry land. It wasn't just beautiful. It was real. It carried hunger, pain, hope, love, and the story of a little girl who sang for her sick mother on cold footpaths. When she finished, the hall remained still. Then slowly, one clap, then another, and suddenly, a wave of applause. People stood up, they clapped, they cried. Zoya looked at her mother, whose hands were pressed over her heart. Kareem stood backstage, tears in his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. But just as Zoya stepped back and bowed, a man stood up from the crowd. Tall, gray hair, expensive suit. He slowly clapped, smirking. "Beautiful story," he said loud enough for all to hear. "But it's missing one thing, the truth." The room turned silent again. Zoya looked confused. The man walked toward the stage slowly, clapping slowly as he spoke. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Mr. Rizwan. I'm the man Shabana once betrayed." Gasps echoed around the hall. Zoya froze. "She stole music from me," Rizwan continued. "And now her daughter pretends to be innocent? A singer from the street? This is nothing but a publicity trick." Zoya's hands tightened on the microphone. Kareem stepped out from backstage. "You have no right to be here, Rizwan." But Rizwan just smiled. "I only came to protect the music industry from liars." Zoya's heart pounded. She looked at the audience. Some were confused, others were whispering. Doubt had begun to spread. But then, she took a step forward. Her voice was calm, but strong. "You may know my mother from the past, but you don't know her pain. You don't know mine." She pointed to the crowd. "While you were busy being famous, I was singing in the rain for coins. My mother never told me to hate you. She only told me to sing from my heart." Rizwan tried to interrupt, but she raised her hand. "I didn't come here for fame. I came here to tell my story. You can say what you want, but I'm not going to stop singing." The audience was silent. Then someone shouted from the back, "Let her sing another one." More voices joined in. "Sing again. Don't listen to him. We believe you." Zoya looked at Mr. Kareem. He nodded once, proudly. She turned back to the mic. And she sang again, this time louder, stronger. She poured all her fear, her anger, her truth into the song. And this time, she didn't cry, because she wasn't afraid anymore. When the concert ended, people rushed to meet her. The press wanted interviews. Music companies wanted contracts, but Zoya didn't care about any of that. She walked straight to her mother's wheelchair. Kneeling down, she took her mother's hand and whispered, I sang. Ami, for you, for us, for everyone who never had a voice. Her mother hugged her tightly. And now they'll never forget you. That night, a video of her performance went viral. Millions watched. Millions cried. But one man watched silently from a dark office. Rizwan. His plan to humiliate her had failed. But he wasn't done yet. He opened a drawer, pulled out an old file, and muttered, Let's see how long this fairy tale lasts. Zoya's name was now everywhere. People called her the voice of the streets. Every TV channel wanted her. Every music company made offers. But Zoya stayed grounded. She still walked to the studio with her worn guitar strapped to her back. She still visited her mother in the hospital every night. Mr. Karim stood beside her through everything, as a mentor, a father, and finally, the man he was always meant to be. For a moment, life seemed perfect. But then it wasn't. One morning, a letter arrived at Karim's office. No name, no stamp. Inside was a copy of an old legal case from years ago, against Shabana. The case accused her of stealing a song from Rizwan, the man who had stood up in Zoya's concert to humiliate. Karim's hands trembled as he read it. The case had never gone to court, but it had destroyed Shabana's career. And now, Rizwan wanted to reopen it. Zoya was called to a private hearing. The room was cold and quiet. On one side sat Zoya, Karim, and her mother, now in a wheelchair but stronger than before. On the other side sat Rizwan with a crooked smile. A judge sat in the center. This is not a full trial, the judge said, but we must decide whether this case deserves to return to court. Rizwan stood up confidently. Your Honor, my song was stolen. I lost my career because of her lies. Now her daughter is using that same fame to become rich. I deserve justice. Zoya watched him with calm eyes. She didn't fear him anymore. But she was angry. She stood up and spoke. Your Honor, I did not steal anything. I wasn't even born when that song was written. But I did sing it. Because it was my mother's lullaby, not his. She paused, looked at her mother, then at the judge. I've sung on streets, in rain, with an empty stomach. No name, no lights, just hunger. If I wanted money, I wouldn't have waited 10 years. I only sang because it kept my mother alive. The room was silent. Even Rizwan's smile faded a little. Zoya opened her guitar case. I want to sing that song one last time, right here, right now. The judge allowed it, and Zoya began. Her voice echoed off the cold walls of the courtroom. There were no lights, no stage, just a broken girl with a guitar and a soul full of scars. She sang the lullaby, slow, emotional, pure. When she finished, there were tears in many eyes. Even the judge wiped his glasses. The judge spoke gently. Music is not always about ownership. Sometimes it's about love. And from what I see, this song lived inside her, not for fame, but for family. He turned to Rizwan. This case will not continue. Let the past stay in the past. Zoya held her mother's hand tightly. They had won. Not just the hearing. They had protected their story. Outside the courtroom, Rizwan stopped them for a moment. His voice was low. You're lucky, he said. But one day the world will forget you. That's how fame works. Zoya smiled. Soft but strong. Maybe. But my story isn't for fame. It's for those who sing in the dark, like I once did. And with that, she walked away. Weeks later, Zoya's first official album released. It was titled Songs from the Footpath. Each track told a part of her life, the hunger, the pain, the hope, the love. The final track was a live recording of that courtroom lullaby. It went viral, Millions cried, millions connected. She was not just a singer now. She was a voice for the unheard, 1 year later. A large concert was held in the same city where she once sang on her knees. A massive stage stood where the footpath used to be, and in front of thousands, Zoya walked out, holding a new guitar. Mr. Karim stood behind her proudly. Her mother, now healthy, watched from the front row. Zoya looked at the crowd and said, "A long time ago I sang here for food. Now I sing here for love, not just mine, but for Evie,